Kickoffs just around the corner in the Palmetto State as Shane Beamer and the South Carolina Gamecocks have college football playoff on the mind. Helping us break down South Carolina, preview the upcoming 2025 season. Good friend of mine, good friend of the show, Chris Marler of Locked On Gamecocks does as good a job as anybody covering South Carolina. Chris, what's going on, man? I appreciate you taking the time. Really excited to chat.
Yeah, man. Excited, man. Just moved further away from Columbia. Started the year in Columbia. So I keep drifting further away, but I'm excited, man. This should be a really, really good year. And I feel like it's been a while since they've had this much momentum going into the season and this much hype going into the season in quite some time.
Yeah, congrats first off to you on the move, everything you've had going on. I feel like you're everywhere. It feels like covering every single team. So you can't escape Chris Marler, even if you want to. And, hey, the Twitter's popping too. It hasn't been suspended. Yeah. So good vibes going into 2025. But that being said, really quickly, Chris, before we talk about this 2025 team, I do want to touch on 2024, get your thoughts because of how we got here and why there is so much momentum. That's because the Gamecocks went 9-4 overall, 5-3 in SEC play. They ended their season with a loss to Illinois in the Citrus Bowl, but won 6 straight regular season games. Had a real case as to why they should have been in the college football playoff. The run they went on end of season was incredible. What LaNorris Sellers did, obviously just took over as one of college football's most electric players. You beat Clemson again, which is always a big deal. Obviously, that rivalry, one of the best in college football. Just talk about the 2024 season. I know you were a little bit – and the expectations were nothing from a national perspective. I know you were a little bit higher on them than most, and obviously they live up to that after a 3-3 start, winning the next 6 in a row. Like, how do you compartmentalize what was done in 2024 and just all that momentum they built up coming into this season?
Yeah. Well, I think it's weird because going into the season, there was so like I came from like more of a not national but like SEC perspective of South Carolina, and it was okay. Like, what are the storylines here? When I first started covering them, it was like Beamer's on the hot seat. They're gonna go 5-7, and they don't have a quarterback. And it was like, and that was like what everyone firmly not just believed but knew, right? And like then you talk to people like around the program, they're like Beamer's not on the hot seat, like we're fine, and then you start looking at what they brought back on defense, and you look at the names and some of these numbers in camp, and it's just like there are so many blatantly obvious things that were like. I remember looking at someone's like, they got this kid named Demetrius Knight Jr. who's like 6'3", 240 and runs 21.5 miles an hour. Like they've got Eamon Warry, who I've seen be one of the best safeties, and like 5-star kid Dylan Stewart at the edge, and then Kyle. Like there were so many pieces in place that the national media did a poor job of just like trying to learn, right? But I remember going into the season, you talk about you're 3-3 at some point. You had to lost to LSU, probably should have lost to Old Dominion. Then you get boat raced by Ole Miss, and I'm sitting here and I do this show, and I'm like, Dowell Loggins he has to be fired. He has to be fired. Here's where you are, and you know me well enough. I do a full stat breakdown. I'm like, here's every single like stat you can think of where they rank, the number, bottom 5 in like over half the offensive categories in the SEC. And then something clicked, man. And once it clicked, LaNorris was playing better than any quarterback in the country to close the season. They won 6 straight games. And I will go to my deathbed saying, if Alabama, and if that was the logo on the side of the helmet, metaphorically speaking, that had won 6 straight games, beat 4 top 25 opponents, and had a quarterback that was playing at the level LaNorris was, Alabama would have made the playoff. But since it's South Carolina, that was never going to happen. And it was a great end of the season. And now you got to figure out how to do it again.
And as you like to say, Chris, so famously, if we're going to talk about college football, we're going to do it using facts. And the fact of the matter is this: Shane Beamer's going into his 5th season in Columbia. And the other fact is that he's not on the hot seat. I know we can agree on that. Want to get your thoughts, though. Obviously, again, I ask everybody when we do these, the overall vibe around the head coach. I always think it's interesting because you've got a real feel on the pulse of the fan base at this point. Vibes around Shane Beamer, I'd imagine they're sky high going into his 5th year.
Yeah, I got to apologize. I'm over here in my new office, and it's at a radio station, so we got some like noise in the background a little bit. But no, so the idea with Beamer, like I think that again, start from the inside out. Like internally, everyone around South Carolina loves him, and what he's done at South Carolina, like Mark Stoops had his famous quote about media days a couple years ago, making fun of the Instagram and TikTok stuff, and you've seen other coaches kind of like pick at him, and like. Listen, Beamer looks like he's 12 years old. I understand he might rub some people the wrong way, but he is a great coach, and he's been doing a really good job. And like at some point they're going to have to start talking about him with like the same way where we give the benefit of the doubt of so many coaches like, oh man, we move mountains to like convince ourselves that Mark Stoops is a good coach. Like Beamer and what he's done in the portal and the development of like former 3-stars and putting in the pros now. And like all those things have to start factoring in when you talk about Shane Beamer going to year 5, better record than Spurrier's first 4 years. Like I think that the confidence in him is really high. And you're also starting to see that with some of the resources he's getting around the program.
So, Chris, let's talk about this 2025 football team. Obviously, it starts on the offensive side. LaNorris Sellers is back. He's arguably the most dynamic quarterback, and maybe not just the SEC, but the entire country. Big storyline right now, waiting on the NCAA for the status of Rahsul Faison. Obviously, hoping that goes through. Oscar Attaway also returns at the running back position, so it might be him if the NCAA doesn't figure it out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You return 2 starting offensive linemen, but there's a lot of experience there. If you actually look at the roster, a lot of guys who've played a ton of football are back up front. Michael Smith at tight end is a guy named to get familiar with, looks to replace the production of a departed Josh Simon, who was the leading pass catcher a season ago. Michael Smith out of Savannah, Georgia, really talented kid. Nick Harbor, big storyline in the spring was he's at wide receiver full time. Maybe this is the year he pops and emerges as the number 1 guy, but you return a bunch of other dudes like Mazeo Bennett, Jared Brown, Vendrevius Jacobs. They're all back for you. On the offensive side, Chris, again, all the headlines go to LaNorris Sellers as they should. What are you expecting from this group? Obviously, I feel like a lot's TBD with what happens with the Faison situation because you kind of saw what this offense looked like when you didn't have Rocket Sanders in the fold. He was such a big piece for you. And again, anytime you're replacing your top pass catcher, that's a big story too. But expectations for this offense with LaNorris Sellers leading the way in 2025.
So here's the deal. I think the receiving core is the best it's been. You can make the case all time. Like the depth they've had there. And it's like a lot of guys aren't going to see the field yet, but like the depth you have there, former 4-stars, freshmen, the class you brought in last year, like from receiving standpoint, the year before that as well. You've got a lot of guys that they finally have some depth there. Like Faison is not going to make or break this team, but there is a very real case to make of like, dude, if you have him versus you don't have him, 7 wins versus 9 or 10 feels very realistic because it's not like that's a kid that has 1,100 yards rushing last year. I think like 7 touchdowns, whatever it was, rips off like a bunch of yards per carry. And you kind of like think about the way he played at Utah State. It's like a scat back type thing, like the way you are catching the ball out of the backfield guy, like not a guy that's like physical between the tackles, maybe like Rocket was. Then you look at the numbers, and he's 6 feet, 220, can run between the tackles, has breakaway speed. Like he checks all the boxes you want in replacing a guy like Rocket Sanders. And the other part too is catching the ball out of the backfield because Sanders was a really big part of that last year as well when they were trying to get LaNorris going. That's why Simon was like targeted, especially at the start of games, more than anybody else. I think they're going to be good there, and I think they also have, like I said, the best quarterback in the country who's a much better passer than we give him credit for. The offensive line has to be better, and like I just don't know how it could be worse. So like it feels like it has to be an improvement. You lost 93.5% of your snaps from guard to guard in those 3 positions, but dude, you gave up 41 sacks for the 2nd straight year, and the other part of that too is. You got some young guys at tackle. One's a former 5-star with Josiah Thompson. But those were the worst 2 tackles, like combinations of any team in the SEC, allowing pressures and sacks. So again, I think of how good they were last year with this awful, awful offensive line. I don't see how it doesn't get better and doesn't improve. And they brought in a lot of talent. I think that's where you're going to see the biggest progression of this team on offense. And I think it's going to be very, very potent, man.
I want to go to the other side of the football, Chris. I think this might be the bigger question mark after you lost so much. But obviously there's a lot of talent back. I mean, Dylan Stewart leads the defensive front off the edge. He's one of the best pass rushers in all of college football. You did add some big-time pieces in the portal. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy from A&M and Monkel Goodwine from Alabama to boost the interior. Fred Johnson is going to be one of your lead linebackers. Obviously, you replaced Debo Williams from a season ago. And Justin, you can probably help me with this name here, Marler, Okunrokwo from Alabama, taking over at linebacker. Okunrokwo. There we go. Taking over the linebacker spot, but you're replacing, I believe, 212 tackles from the linebacker position that are no longer there from a season ago. And then the secondary should be a strength yet again. I mean, Judge Collier, Jelon Kilgore, DQ Smith, they're all back. You do lose Nicky Manwari, but again, those three guys I just mentioned, they're as good as anybody in the SEC. So talk about the defense a little bit, what you're expecting from that side. Again, I feel like that's probably the bigger question mark, but there's still a lot of pieces there for Clayton White to work with.
The SEC is going to be really good. I mean, I'm sorry, the secondary is going to be really good. Linebacker, you replace all three, like you said. The question I have, like starting from like defensive line, Dylan Stewart has all the talent in the world. Last year, he probably benefited a little bit from having Kyle Kennard on the other side of the ball. So this year, he is probably going to face for the first time double teams, triple teams, like stuff like that, like running right at him in the run game to try to take him out of his game. Like, so how do you stop that? The other part too is you interior. Like you brought in a lot of talent, but you talk about guys last year that were not just experienced and like 5th and 6th year guys, like right up the middle. You're talking about guys that like were producing and like kind of abnormally well from that position. Both interior defensive linemen had 4 sacks last year. Like you saw what they did in the run game. So you got to figure out how to replace guys like that. And you've got some like on paper, some really big time recruits and pieces that should go in there right away. But right up the middle, how do you work with how do you change that from year to year and make sure you don't drop or miss a beat? Linebacker is going to be interesting, man, because like Debo Williams going to last year, he was supposed to be the best linebacker on this roster. He was the biggest liability on the roster last year. And I love Debo Williams. He was a great player there, but he was, I mean, listen, Demetrius Knight Jr. was all over the field. Williams was a little bit slower, not as productive, and like from 2023 to 2024. And then you also have Martin Scott. So like you have all these players that you have to produce or have to replace, but you're doing it with players that were like, again, like from a recruiting standpoint, like much higher ranked recruits, 4 stars, like Fred Johnson, like all these, like dude, that Owen Rockwell kid is from Germany. He was like a 3-star recruit because he was from Germany. But there's like multiple people on the Bama staff that under Saban were like, this kid would have been a can't miss 5-star if he played in America. Like that's like the projection thing of him. I think they're going to be better there. And my thing is this: I keep going this. Chris Storing told me this a couple years back about Florida, and I feel like it applies to South Carolina. If you're worried about this defense replacing all these people, I would challenge you and say, it's not like y'all knew who these people were going into last season. It's not like you had all these names listed out and you're like, oh, they're going to be great. Clayton White has produced one of the best defenses in this conference year over year over year. They have led the SEC in total turnovers for 4 straight years, with 88 total combined. Like every year, no matter what faces or stars and rankings are next to the name, like they have produced. And if you are able to put 3 former 3-stars, overlooked and under-recruited into the top 50 picks in the NFL draft from that level of talent out of high school, I just have to think the development with even better players and recruits is only going to be as good or better.
Chris, obviously special teams is a facet of the game that often gets overlooked. That is not the case in Columbia, obviously, with Shane Beamer's track record or the impact it's had on a yearly basis every year that he's been there. But an interesting year for special teams for the Gamecocks, replacing starters at kicker, punter, and long snapper. It's a brand new special team.
Keep going.
Yeah, I think you actually talked to me about Shane Beamer's talked about this a good bit because it's first time in his career where it's just like everybody's going to be new. It looks like, William Joyce is going to figure to factor in at kicker. That's going to be a battle that goes on. Mason Love is a name, might take over at punter. Again, these are probably still open competitions going into fall camp. Guys like Nick Harbor, Jelon Kilgore, maybe options at returner. But there's a lot of unknowns, Chris, when it comes to special teams. What is known, though, is this. You can probably count on South Carolina to block a kicker, a punt at some point, change a game. But in regards to just the overall specialists, a lot of unknowns that are going to be determined over the next couple weeks in fall camp.
I say Shane Beamer said this at media days, and I was like, I taken aback because I was like, oh my god, I didn't even think about this. Like it was the first time in my career of 20 years plus coaching. You replace everyone. You replace the kicker, punter, long snapper, holder, kickoff specialist, kick returner, and punt returner. I'm like, good Lord. The dog that goes and picks up the tee in between after they kick off, he's gone too. Rest in peace. That's a joke. No one died. But anyway, he there's a lot to replace there. But again, this is where I think that you do give finally this benefit of the doubt to Beamer, where it's like, they have done really well in special teams every single year. There. Last year was the first year you didn't have Pete Limbo, who went to Buffalo to be a head coach. So you had to break in a new special teams coach then. I think they're going to be fine. And again, this is not like a detriment or talking negatively about the team from a year ago. But there are several spots on this team where it's like, dude, replacing Kai Kroger sucks. Kai Kroger, even as a passer in trick play scenarios, like that sucks that you have to replace that guy. But like, there's a lot of like positions on this team where you're replacing someone that's like the production that they had. They're great kids, gave their all for this program, but the production they had is like not very difficult to replace. So
I had a lot of my buddies griping about Alex Herrera. Let's just call that for what it is.
Yeah. And like, you know, that LSU game at the end, like even with all the things that went bad, you still could have like tied that up at the end. That was a pretty long kick, but I think that they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be in a situation where they've got some talent there, and you know, maybe instead of averaging 46 yards a punt, you're averaging 44 or 43. I don't know, but I also would be willing to bet that like you're going to be in less of those spots where you have to have 3 and outs because of how good this offense is going to be.
So, Chris, a stat that doesn't matter quite as much anymore, but is one of note. You got 9 starters back. Like I said, with the portal, that's not really as high impact a stat as it used to be. But 9 starters do return, 5 on offense, 4 on defense. I want to take a look, Chris, really briefly at the schedule, because as we all know, not all schedules are built equally in the SEC. Not all schedules are built equally in college football. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but that is the case. I know you're a big schedule guy. But for South Carolina, you open up with that big one in Atlanta, neutral site game against Virginia Tech on that Sunday, by the way, Sunday afternoon. Open up SEC play with Vandy, and then you're off and running. You're at Mizzou, at LSU, at Ole Miss, at A&M for your road games. Most notably, the month of October, you get Oklahoma and Alabama back-to-back at Williams-Brice Stadium. And then you close out the season, of course, with your arch rival Clemson, who's got college football playoff aspirations and maybe national championship aspirations of their own. Just overall thoughts, Chris, on this 2025 slate and how you feel like it shapes up for the Gamecocks, and especially Gamecocks trying to have a big year, how it shapes up for them.
If I hear one more person tell me how difficult the schedule is going to be for South Carolina. I said this last year. I'll say it again.
Lather, rinse, repeat, baby. It's
the schedule is the schedule, man. It's like
Yeah.
You know who's not on that schedule? Georgia, and they were for 40 years. So it's like, thank God we don't have that anymore. Like, so I look at the schedule and I think, you know what? Oklahoma, A&M, I have that as a loss because they have done nothing to show me they could win out in College Station. And yeah, so like, I think that's a loss. But like A&M, them, Clemson at home. And there's like, I think they get Bam October 25th. And like the second half of the schedule, everyone keeps talking about, like, oh, it's just brutal. And it is brutal. Like the Ole Miss, but it was brutal last year. Like it's the same schedule. Here's something I didn't know until I looked it up. And you know, we should all do that, like with like facts and stuff, looking at these Big Ten people like in my mentions all the time. Like Shane Beamer is 6-0 in the month of November in the last 3 seasons against teams that are ranked in the top 25. Like he has been really good to close seasons. This is the most complete team he's had. This is the best roster he's had. The blue chip ratio increased from 33% from last year to this year. Like the schedule's the schedule. And what was, in my opinion, what's happening when you project that, because nobody thought they were going to go 6-0 to close out the year, right? When you're projecting and looking at the schedule and the opponents on it now, especially at the end of it, what's happening is we're all just assuming, or not me, but like national media is assuming like, well, how are they going to beat Oklahoma? I don't know. They dog walked them last year without like scoring an offensive point in the first, you know, like there's 21-0 after 5 minutes. Like, how are they going to beat Ole Miss? I don't know. Like most of that team is gone from last year. Like all those games, like the Clemson game, you get them at home. Like there's so many spots on there that people are worried about, but it's like you're a lot of times assuming that those teams are all going to somehow get better or return to the form they used to be, like Oklahoma. And at the same time thinking like, well, Carolina's Carolina. And what have we seen from them for most of like their existence in the SEC is kind of like right here in terms of like averageness and mediocrity. Well, this is not that team and that program anymore. They've turned a corner. So the schedule is tough, and they could go 7-5 and still be a really good team. They can go 9-3 in the same way. But I think the big thing for me is for the first time since maybe Clowney was there, they're going to have an advantage that no one else has, and that is when LaNorris Sellers steps on the field, he is the best athlete and the best player on the field no matter what. And I think that like unless they go line up against Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, I don't see anybody else that's going to step on like in between the white lines and be as good as him. So he is able to win games, like get you in out of bad situations. So the Missouri game last year, he's like the ultimate equalizer in terms of that.
Chris, a program that has turned a corner, no doubt. When you look at the overall outlook of this team, I want to ask you simply this, because you've already mentioned you believe the Gamecocks are indeed a college football playoff contender. What do you think the ceiling is for this group and for LaNorris Sellers? Like, is the ceiling making the college football playoff? Can this team get to 10 wins? I've seen LaNorris Sellers in the Heisman conversation. Like, is that the ceiling? Is that possible in your mind? Like, where do you put the ceiling for this team?
It's a hard question to answer because like I really do believe in this team and this program. I like, and it took me a while to get there. Like covering this. I mean, I've lived in Columbia for a lot, and like I've been familiar with South Carolina football, and for a long time it was, you know, I mean, you were Mississippi State of the East in a lot of ways, and like the facilities being like top 10 facilities, and that's not me speaking. That's like Brad Crawford 247 Sports like rankings, like. Those facilities, like what they did last year when they did so much more with less, like I don't know what the ceiling is. I want to say they have the ability to win a national championship. The biggest concern I have is not the talent getting there and the coaching to get them there. It's when you get in that moment, what I have seen, as much as I love to death, and he's been great at a lot of times, Beamer versus Lane Kiffin last year, Beamer was completely outmatched. And Kiffin knew it. And like, the stuff that he did early on with like the timeout and then the fake punt, like he's just still kind of in his infant stages of being a head coach. And so he kind of overthinks stuff. The game against Illinois, Brett Bielema is clearly just trying to get under your skin, and you could not like, listen, I get it. You've seen me on Twitter. Like I fully understand not being able to like control your outbursts, whatever. But like there's stuff that I think this team is good enough to get to the playoff. Advancing in the playoff and then in competing with teams like Texas and Notre Dame and Ohio State and teams like that, like that's when I wonder if the roster's built for it, if the depth should be better, but is it there? And is the maturity level as a head coach and like understanding of like different situations there from Beamer? I hope so. I genuinely don't know because we're still watching this guy grow into this position with every single game that goes on. And to his credit, like outside of the outburst and the Cheez-It Bowl, like you saw him also get better as a coach and how he handled situations as the games went on.
Chris, you may have just kind of hit on it, but on that same note, if the Gamecocks are going to repeat even what they did last year, get back to 9 wins, have an opportunity to push for 10, is there a key you look at for this team, like the thing that's got to click? We all know about LaNorris Sellers, obviously. Yeah. If you want to go there, you can. But the thing that you feel like for this 2025 squad, it's got to click for them to get to that level.
They got to be good up the middle. They cannot let teams run all over them. No one's going to, like, the secondary, you're not going to get thrown all over, right? Like I don't care how many hurry up, no huddle and spread offenses and, like, you know, air it out, like whatever. That you're not going to see this defense give up a ton of points and be in situations where they're throwing for 400 yards. But teams can potentially run the football on them because of how thin we all think they might be going into the season, losing 5 or 6 of your front 7, right? Like, so you need those replacements to be good and be good immediately, because the best defense for most teams, or best defense for most teams that are facing South Carolina. The point I'm trying to make is keeping LaNorris Sellers off the field is going to be one of the best things that opposing teams can do all year. And if they can run the football and run it at will at times and control the clock and make sure he's on the sideline, that's a big detriment to this team if that happens.
Chris, last thing before I get you out of here, is there a worse offseason narrative than LaNorris Sellers can't throw the football?
We're allowed to cuss on here. Fucking look at the stats, man. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Just go look at the fucking numbers. Google is free. There's a lot of things we pay for in this life. Google, I paid $1.50 for a Diet Coke I found out was expired in 2020. But you know what? Google is free. Go get Google and go fucking look up the numbers, man. It's crazy to me that not just intermediate, not behind the line of scrimmage, downfield. Incredible. Also incredible on third downs. I don't know what we're talking about here. It's crazy.
Chris Marler, Locked On Gamecocks, a good friend of mine and certainly one of the best in the business when it comes to talking all things South Carolina. You got a lot of great stuff going on. Well-deserved, my friend. In case folks have been living under a rock, let them know where they can check out all your work.
Yeah, man. Vern_Funquist is the social media stuff. And then, as you can tell from this prison background that I'm in, I have not decorated the new office yet. Just moved to Baton Rouge, and really excited about this, covering the SEC for LouisianaSports.net and ESPN 104.5 are on their social and covering the SEC for them as well.
Chris, you're the man. Let's definitely do it again soon.
Sounds good, brother.